Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Jai Hare Hare Bo. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Okay, welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam class. The Bhagavatam class is the first of 3 seminars. First of class of 1 seminar, on forgiveness that's going to be given to us by His Grace, Radhika Ramana Prabhu. As I mentioned in that overlong email, that we have to get serious here, Prabhupada encouraged transcendental competition. So, His Grace Radhika Ramana Prabhu every year goes to ISKCON Silicon Valley. And every year he gives this wonderful speech how he thanks the audience for their wonderful, enthusiastic hearing and coming. So I mentioned that in the email. Dear devotees, let's give ISKCON Silicon Valley a run for its money and also inspire Radhika Ramana Prabhu to come every year to Radhadesh and give presentations. But we got to put some work in to do that, because it's not easy for him to come. Very, 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 very busy soul, very serious. He's got a major professional occupation, and he's got a family, and so many demands. So, Ramananda Rai Prabhu sent a nice summary of Radhika Ramana Prabhu's description. Oh, that sort of thing too. Vaisheshika Prabhu always gives this big, huge introduction to the devotees who already know Radhika Ramana. But still, so I'm not going to try and compete with Vaisheshika Prabhu. That would be silly. But we all, if you've seen the email, the absolutely incredible description. But most of us, unfortunately, Radhika Ramana, to be honest, we don't understand the Charles Reed Professional Religious Studies chair. I mean, to us they go, what? But just know it's big. It's big. It's very serious. The whole point is, for a very young person, he was finished school, finished college, finished PhD, and became a very acknowledged professor very, very, very young, very early. 30 years ahead of what normal people would be doing these things. And of course, the other famous point we always like to mention is his homeschooling from his wonderful mother, Ruda Mataji, from the Bhagavatam. And that's one of my meditations on this forgiveness seminar. We have other forgiveness seminars in ISKCON, wonderful seminars also. But Radhika Ramana Prabhu bases his very much on the Bhagavatam. We're really getting Bhagavatam understandings of such a big topic. And it really, for us devotees, we really like that. We like to hear it more through the Shastra, and very much based upon the Shastra. So that's the presentation that Radhika Ramana Prabhu gives. So, and just to, I think, on a personal point, explain how, and Yadurani Mataji, is she here yet? Not here yet. She wrote a very nice email how devotees don't really appreciate. She said, and I'll read from Yadurani's email, his lectures are like a flow of nectar. The way that he explains the philosophy is clear and workable. His realizations take one by surprise as he turns any doubt into loving glorification of the relationships of the Lord and His devotees. Don't let his humility and grateful nature deceive you to thinking that he is an ordinary person. He deserves our full obeisances and gratitude. So that's a very, very nice text from Yadurani Mataji. And I want to add, just, everybody who knows me, the person I listen to the most, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, because he's just such a wonderful speaker and so precise and so analytical. But the one person I've seen correct Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is Radhika Ramana Prabhu. in a course in there, they know each other very well in very love, sweet ways. And I thought, so even my dear Chaitanya Charan Prabhu sometimes needs input from a wonderful soul. And the other one is in Mayapur. We know for years the Kirtan Mela. Then they started the Shravana Mela a few years back. And this is in Mayapur. And in Mayapur, unless you're carrying a danda, yeah. So in the Shravana Mela, it was so-and-so Swami, Swami, and Radhika Ramana Prabhu. So I thought, okay, that's definitely a clear recognition that they're recognized. And he spoke on Tattva Sandarbha, which that's not Upans who read Sattva Sundara, because we know it's not. And he presented that book, such a technical philosophical book, in such a way that people can understand it. That takes, as Prabhupada said, realization. So we're hearing this wonderful topic in 3 parts on realization, and today is the topic of Krishna's forgiving nature. And just to prime you, this topic delves deep into the nature of Krishna. When I first heard him present this, the nature of God, the very nature of Krishna, which, believe it or not, we don't talk about enough in the Krishna consciousness movement. The nature of Krishna, the God that we believe in, the reason he's all attractive. We don't discuss that. And so today we'll hear why Krishna is so all attractive, because of his wonderful nature. And then to finish, I think, because Vaisheshwu likes clapping. I'm not such a key fan of clapping. But let's do the Chapati style, and 3 loud Hari Bols. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol!
Wow. That was quite an introduction to live up to.
That was the edited version.
When you listen to introductions about yourself, you come to recognize who you're supposed to be and how much you have to progress still in order to become that person. And so I take everything you've said as blessings that will hopefully come true one day. And just want to thank the devotees here for this opportunity. I was reflecting yesterday or day before that I think I'm close to 25 years in terms of when I first started coming to Radhadesh regularly. This was probably 2000 or something like that, maybe 1999. Yeah, it's the last few years I haven't been able to come as regularly and have missed it very, very much. So many things about this place are so special for me. And I would say that the greatest for me has been the morning programs here are the closest thing I know to the spiritual world. It's really an extraordinary experience and something that I try to carry with me as I leave this place as well every time I visit. And that's because, of course, of their wonderful and very beautiful Lordship, Shri Radha Gopinath, but especially because of their devotees, I think. People who have so much dedication and affection for them and have been serving here for so many years, as well as those who are newer and bring so much enthusiasm. That combination is really, really sweet and very wonderful. And all the other things, of course, all feed into that. The beautiful grounds, the delicious prasads, the lots of wonderful kirtan. So thank you so much for creating this holy place, which I hope if you're residents here, you recognize something that all of us visitors know very well, which is that there's very few places in the world like this. And thank you for keeping it alive and going, even through long and dark winter months and very warm summer months and all the challenges that come from that. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. As Shyamananda Prabhu said, this seminar is on forgiveness, and the full title is a little long, but it's called Seeking Forgiveness and Offering Forgiveness, Lessons from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as he mentioned, my attempt in this seminar is to really go through Srimad Bhagavatam and look for examples of both people seeking forgiveness and also people forgiving. And try to recognize some patterns in those examples that can be useful for us on a practical level. So, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam are the stories of extraordinary people, the Lord himself, his pure devotees, and their examples are beyond our imagination in terms of how perfect they are. But they're also the stories of devotees who are aspiring to be advanced and perfect in their Krishna consciousness and stumble along the way. And there's many, many examples of this in Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, perhaps it's the most frequent motif we find in Srimad Bhagavatam is that of the very, very sincere devotee who stumbles. And as a result, there are many, many people who need forgiveness and who seek that forgiveness, and therefore other devotees who are in the position of generously offering that forgiveness. So in other words, there's a lot of practical lessons for us to receive as well from Srimad Bhagavatam. And my hope is to look for those patterns, to see what is there that we might be able to mine or to milk or to gather from the wonderful stories of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will talk about both of those things. How first we will speak of how do we seek forgiveness when we have done something wrong. And the second part will be how do we request or how do we forgive for someone who requests forgiveness from us? How do we let go and offer that forgiveness? So those are the two key parts, and with each one I'll look at examples. With each one I'll look at examples of and try to come up with particular steps together about how these can be achieved, how we can seek forgiveness, and how we can offer it when asked for, or even when not asked for. So we'll do that Saturday and Sunday. Today's class is perhaps less about practical application and more about motivation or inspiration. Why should we even attempt this thing called forgiveness? One could very well live in this world with the attitude of, I do my thing and everyone else can go to hell. And that approach is one that many people practice, right? And it seems to work for some people in terms of getting them through life. But for Vaishnavas, that is unsatisfactory. It's insufficient. And today I want to speak about why. The main reason for that is because our relationships as devotees are modeled upon the standard that Krishna sets for us and what we seek from him. And because all of us, at some point or another, usually quite regularly, seek forgiveness from Krishna himself, therefore, let us first take some time to examine Krishna's quality of forgiveness. And in that, perhaps, we can find some motivation to forgive and seek forgiveness ourselves amongst each other. So today's session is actually the shorter of the other two. I'm more worried about how we're going to fit the other two into the allotted time, but today is a little more compact, looking at just this quality of forgiveness within Krishna. So with that, I'll just begin with a short Jai Radha Madhav, and then we'll launch into the seminar. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hare Bal, Hare Bal, Hare Bal, Gaura Hare Bal, Nitai Gaura Hare Bal. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Lalita Devi Vishakha Devi ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladevi Subhadra Maharani ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaunitai ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Okay, so even though I said this would be based on Srimad Bhagavatam, I wanted to begin by reading one verse and purport from Bhagavad-gita. This is chapter 9, and it's quite a well-known verse. We won't do it call and response in the interest of time, but I will read it through for us here. This is chapter 9, text number 30. Part 1 is good, thank you. Text number 30. This is Krishna's famous statement about devotees who make mistakes. So, please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Api chet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabha sadhureva samantavya samyagvya vasito hisa. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Please repeat. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Purport. The word sudurachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditional life. And such activities are called conditional. Okay? Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called a devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. They'll go along together. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. So I like this word very much. Wholesome condition, Prabhupada is saying. A devotee tries to be wholesome. Our material activities, our day-to-day business activities, and our Krishna consciousness all go together nicely. They fit. That's wholesome. So as far as possible, we try to keep things wholesome. Sometimes, however, he knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that even an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path. For, as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course. In the next verse, Krishna says, he quickly becomes righteous and attains everlasting peace. Declare it boldly, O Arjun, that my devotee never perishes. That's the sequence here. Krishna says, even if they do something terrible, they should be regarded as a sadhu, as a saintly person, because it was accidental, because their consciousness, their determination is in the right place. And because that determination is in the right place, therefore, very quickly, they will become righteous and attain everlasting peace. Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident, and we'll talk about tomorrow what that means, chance or accident, he is found to have fallen. The words sadhur eva, he is saintly, are very emphatic. The word eva, very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. This is a form in Sanskrit that means that it must be done. It is to be done, right? Mantavya in this case means they should be thought of, sadhur eva, only as a saint and nothing else. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. At the end of the purport, Prabhupada then ensures that we don't use this as an excuse to go haywire in our practice and say, yay, yippee, and we can do anything we want. He says, on the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he is not a high devotee. So we'll discuss this again more tomorrow and the day after, how Prabhupada is setting two standards. In judging others, we must think of them as sadhus, even if there is some accidental fall down. In judging ourselves, we must be very careful not to take advantage of this instruction and excuse ourselves from such fall downs. So Krishna here, he's describing the standard of his character. He's explaining how he thinks of a devotee, of his own devotee. that even when there is some mistake or some fall down, Krishna still regards them as being wholesome because they will very quickly become so. And the next verse is inextricably connected to this, when Krishna says, Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. They become very quickly dharmatma, which means very righteous, very good people. Shashvat chantim nigacchati, and they get eternal peace. Therefore, O Arjun, declare it to the world that my devotee never perishes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on these verses, says that when a devotee approaches Krishna with a sense of deep remorse within his or her heart, feeling, this is how he describes it. He says, the devotee feels that I have done something terrible, and because of me, the reputation of the community of devotees is now ruined. And when a devotee approaches Krishna with that sense of remorse, the fire of that remorse burns up the sinful activity in which they have engaged, and they very quickly become good again. They become wholesome again. It's interesting that he describes it in the sense, he places it immediately in the context of community. Right? Immediately, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the remorse is born from the devotee's understanding that each one of us serves as a representative of not just ourselves and not just of Krishna, but of the entire community of devotees that is attempting to become devotees of Krishna. And so for that person, Krishna very quickly takes away any negativity that might be present. What if then, he then raises the next question, what if that person continues to do the same mistake over and over again? What about them? And he says it is at this point that Krishna becomes a little upset with the question and asks and recites the second verse that we mentioned. No, even if they're doing this repeatedly, if their determination is properly situated, right? And what does this mean, repeatedly? Sometimes we have some weakness in our practice, in our character, in our desires. And so what happens is we slip and then we get up. And we become very determined. I'm not going to try that again. And that was I overate yesterday and that wasn't a good experience. I'm never going to do this again. And of course we do it again, okay? To take a very innocuous example. And we become weak and then we try again and we try again. And Krishna says, even in that situation, if a devotee thinks in the following way, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is expressing Krishna's deepest intentions here. If a devotee even in that situation, a devotee thinks that, if a devotee thinks in the following way, I may go to hell for my repeated mistakes, but I will not give up the service of the Lord, no matter what. If a devotee has that kind of determination, then Krishna says, Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Very quickly, they will become purified as a result of that determination. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes it one step further, in which he says that people often take pleasure in finding faults within the community of devotees. And here he's thinking outsiders look at devotees, because you couldn't possibly imagine devotees finding fault with each other. So he's thinking of outside the community. He says people often find fault with devotees and say, look at them, they're like this. See how much they eat, and they don't even know how to do this properly, and that ritual is done incorrectly. And he says, Krishna becomes very upset at this point, and he says, Kaunteya pratijanihi. Arjun, you go into such assemblies, throw your arms into the air, and declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. I always protect them. And why, he says, does he ask Arjun to declare it boldly? Because in assemblies outside the community of devotees, people may not believe Krishna himself. The reason for that is Krishna has a checkered history when it comes to maintaining his promises. He's widely known as someone who's a thief, who dances in the middle of the night with others' wives, who steals various things from various people. And so they may not believe their statement, and therefore Arjun, who's very upright and is a person of great moral character and is a warrior who has always kept his vow, right? His vow was that he would not ever let go of his Gandiva bow. If anyone asked him to drop his bow, that would be their end, right? His arrow was always successful. For someone like that, they would believe him. He'd be more trustworthy. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur then adds something very sweet. He says, actually, when Krishna is dealing with his own devotees, then he makes promises to them directly, because he knows they will believe him. Right? Just like in Bhagavad-gita at the very end, he says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mami vaishyasi satyam te pratijane. He uses the same verb. Pratijane prayosi me. Arjun, I promise you that you will come back to me. If you think of me, become my devotee, offer your worship to me, you will come back to me. I promise you this, because his promise is good enough for his devotees. But for the world, it may not be. And therefore, Krishna is saying, Arjun, you go tell them that my devotee never perishes. So Krishna is very convinced about this point. That's the essence of what Srila Prabhupada is saying here, and what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining, is that Krishna is very emphatic, very convinced about this point, that he is ready to forgive his devotees' transgressions. And we see this in Krishna's character over and over again in the stories of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the way that he deals with his devotees. Sometimes his devotees set out with very good intentions, but the result of those intentions is not very positive, is not very, the action itself does not end up in a very good place. Perhaps you have some experience of this. I certainly do, of starting some service with the best of intentions, that I'm really going to do this honestly, sincerely, with no motivation except to please Krishna. That's it. Or to please Guru. Right? That's the only desire. So I pick up the mridanga and I start Kirtan. This is for Radha Gopinath. And people start dancing and they start becoming happy. And halfway through I'm thinking, wow, this is going really well. Look at everyone's dancing. And then pretty soon I'm thinking, wow, I'm a pretty good Kirtan leader here, aren't I? Right? And all of a sudden, my intention started off very well, and then what I ended up offering to the Lord was something a little more mixed. Right? It was mixed with some personal motivation for self-positioning or aggrandizement or glory of some kind. This is so often the story of devotees. We begin with strong intention. By the time that intention manifests into action, it's less praiseworthy, right? Or sometimes outright wrong. It becomes a mistake in some way. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we find examples of this type of scenario. When Jai and Vijay, the two gatekeepers in Vaikuntha, when they meet the four Kumaras, the four child sages, who are visiting Vaikuntha, they want to come and see Lord Vishnu. They have heard many wonderful things about him. They want to see him. They show up at the door of heaven. 7 gates, they pass through 6. When they arrive at the 7th gate, they are stopped by the gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay, whose job it is to protect the Lord from unnecessary disturbance. These are 4 boys who are completely naked and unknown to Jai and Vijay. And their intention is to do their job well. Right? And their job is to protect the Lord from unannounced and unqualified visitors. And so they put their clubs in front of the gate and they say, stop, with their hands out like this. Stop. You cannot come in. And it says their eyes become full of anger. Their nostrils are flaring, and they shout, "Stop, don't go in." And when they do this, the 4 boys become very upset. They're children, after all. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that children expect to go freely anywhere. And when they are stopped, they become very upset. So it was quite in their nature to feel upset, and they become angry. But because they are no ordinary children, their tantrums can be quite dangerous. And they utter this terrible curse on Jai and Vijay, telling them that they will need to, they say, "You must go down to that place," namely this earth, "where people are overcome by the qualities that you have just displayed. Fear. You are afraid of us coming in when there's nothing to fear in the spiritual world. Anger. You just became angry at us. And that is not a quality of great souls. That's a quality of demons. Because you have displayed these qualities, you should go to that place where these qualities rule." And they send them down to this earth. So the story goes on, of course, and it's a beautiful example that we will look at later tomorrow about forgiveness, seeking forgiveness and offering forgiveness. But the point is that their intention started out very well. They wanted to do their service nicely. In the process, they made a major mistake. The Bhagavatam says it was a mistake. All the acharyas say it was a mistake. Different acharyas place the blame in different places. Some find more to blame in the character of Jai and Vijay. They made a mistake. Others find more reason to blame the 4 Kumaras. It was actually their mistake. After all, think about it. Even though the 4 Kumaras were supposed to have been let into Vaikuntha, they too displayed a quality that they should not have, right? Which is anger. They became so angry so quickly about something so small. It could have just been a conversation, right? Like, "Okay, I know your job is to protect. This is who we are. Right? Let me introduce ourselves." But no, they expected everyone to know who they were. And how could they be stopped? So, in general, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas tend to place a little bit more blame on the Kumaras. They are, after all, Brahmavadis. They don't yet know the Lord's personal feature. They're not actually... Vallabhacharya goes so far as to say that the reason that they did not... There are 7 gates to Vaikuntha. 7 gates. Each one of those gates has gatekeepers. The first 6 gates, they were able to pass through because they were qualified. Each gate represents something different. The 7th gate represents bhakti. And because they did not yet possess bhakti in their hearts, therefore at the 7th gate, they saw the gatekeepers and they were stopped. They did not deserve to enter Vaikuntha. And the evidence for this, the acharyas say, is that even till the end of the story, they never did get to enter Vaikuntha. The Lord came running out as fast as he possibly could. And why did he come running out of the gates? To protect not the Kumaras, but Jai and Vijay. It was the gatekeepers that the Lord was particularly concerned about. His devotees who were samyak vyavasito hisa, very properly situated in their determination, even though apichet suduracharo, they had made a big mistake in this situation. And that everyone agrees with. It was a mistake. But because it was an accidental mistake, sadhur eva samantavya, Krishna says, no, they're still sadhus, and I need to protect them. So he comes running out. And so quickly does he come running out of the gates. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the Lord forgot to put on his shoes. He comes barefoot, the Bhagavatam says. And he comes with his hand upon the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, which is a very odd position because normally the Lord rides upon his back. But so quick was the Lord that even Garuda could not keep up with him. And he came running behind him saying, "My Lord, I am happy to take you." And the Lord, just to make him feel accepted, put his hand on his shoulder and said, "It's okay, it's okay. This time I was in a real rush and I can go faster even than you." Right? So he just to accept his service, he put his hand on Garuda's shoulder. So in this way, and then when the Lord, the punchline really comes when the Lord speaks to the Kumaras, the 4 boys. He tells them, "You are Brahmins, you are sages, and you are worshipable for me. Therefore, whatever punishment you give them, I will accept, because ultimately their misbehavior is my responsibility. I'm in charge of them. They are my servants. Therefore, I'm responsible. If you choose even to cut off my arms, my left and my right arm, I will accept it for you." Who are his left and right arms? Jai and Vijay. And the Lord is telling them that by offering this curse and sending them down to earth, you have cut off my left and my right arm. This is what you've done. And after hearing the Lord's speech, the 4 Kumaras are so much overtaken by regret that they turn to the Lord and they say, "My dear Lord, whatever punishment you want to give us, you are free to do so, because we have cursed 2 innocent people. Please forgive us." Jai and Vijay sought forgiveness immediately. As soon as they had heard the curse, they recognized something was wrong. At this point, the 4 Kumaras have sought forgiveness from the Lord. And in the story then, the Lord also seeks forgiveness from the Kumaras for the way in which they have been wronged and takes full responsibility for what has happened. By the end of the story, everyone has sought forgiveness and taken responsibility. Complete responsibility for the whole thing. So, it's a beautiful story. We'll come back to it several times in the coming days. But the point here that I want to just emphasize is this one. That when the intention is good, but the application or the action that results from that intention is not right, Krishna still forgives. And in the case of Jai and Vijay, that's what happened. Their intention was excellent. Their application, they made a mistake. They got the wrong people. They stopped the wrong people. Krishna not only forgave them, but ensured. He came down to earth 3 times to make sure that they made it back home successfully. Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. My devotee never perishes. And I ensure that even if I have to take incarnation on earth 3 times, as Lord Nrsimhadev, as Lord Ramachandra, as Krishna, to protect my devotee, I will do that, no matter how many times I have to come to this earth to do that. Another example of Krishna accepting the intention and ignoring the action is of Maharaj Bharat. Right? He goes to the forest with the intention to achieve Krishna. He rises to the position of bhava, of pure devotional service and ecstasy, and then becomes distracted by attachment to a deer. Ends up slipping as a result, forgetting Krishna at the crucial time in his life. When he needs to focus on Krishna, he's now focused on all kinds of other attachments. But his intention was good, right? His intention was to just help a helpless living being that needed his help. That's a good intention. This was a little baby deer whose mother had died in childbirth, and he wanted to protect her. Yes, he didn't know how far to go. Yes, he didn't know when to stop, when to let the child go and say, "Now you can do it on your own, right? I've protected you, now you go out into the forest and live your life." He didn't know when it was right to draw the boundary, but the intention was good. It was a Vaishnava quality of compassion. He had set out to worship the Lord. So even though in his next life he became a deer, he never forgot his intention. Sadhur eva samantavya. Right? Samyad vyavasi. His determination was still fixed. Krishna did not take that away. And within the course of a couple lifetimes, he achieves perfection. So when the intention is good, but the action is bad, Krishna takes the intention and he ignores the action. He says, it's okay. I'll ignore the action. The intention was right. That's what really matters, is the intention. However, when a devotee's action is good, but the intention is bad, then what happens? Krishna conveniently says, I think I'll just pay attention to the action. Isn't that impressive? What this devotee has done for me? Let's ignore why he did it. That doesn't actually matter. Let's ignore the intention behind it. Can anyone think of an example when Krishna accepts the action but ignores the terrible intention? Yes, the most famous example is, of course, Putana, right? This is particularly glorified by Uddhava in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm going to come back to this verse, so hold on to that thought, because this is really very, very beautiful, this particular example. Putana came as Krishna's, she offered her breast milk for Krishna to drink with the intention of killing him. Krishna accepted the milk and ignored the intention. What other examples? We'll come back to this one. What other examples do we find? Yes. Yes. Ajamila is a really good example. Ajamila, when he's on his deathbed, right, lives a very nice life initially, then falls, loses his path, lives an abominable remainder of his life, leaves his wife of so many years, spends his days with a prostitute, has many children from her, has to pay for all kinds of bills that come through. As a result of that, steals and robs and commits all kinds of crimes to get enough money to support his ever-growing family. And like this, arrives at his deathbed as a very old man who's lived a third of his life very well and 2/3 in a terrible way. And as he comes to his deathbed, he's frightened like anything. He's scared. And in his fear, he calls out to his youngest son, who is the smallest. He's had this child in his old age, and therefore has captured his heart. And that child is named Narayan. And as he calls the child Narayan, Narayan, and he's dying, his initial intent is not to call the Lord, whose name is Narayan. His initial intent is to call the child. But just because he's calling his name, Krishna says, oh, the action is right. It's my name. And the Yamadutas say, but he didn't mean you. And Krishna said, well, I don't care. It's okay. Whatever. It's me. It's the action that matters, right? It's not the intention that matters. When have I said the intention matters? And of course, Krishna says many times the intention matters. But when he can help his devotee, when he can find an excuse to forgive his devotee, he'll ignore whatever is convenient, whatever is in favor of the devotee. And in this case, he decides that Ajamila's action is what matters. The intention makes no difference whatsoever. And of course, the Vishnudutas come and they have this big argument with the Yamadutas, and they succeed in protecting him. Any other examples that come to mind?
It came to my mind, but unfortunately I forgot the name, and it was always troubling me, because it was the only demon who was not killed by Krishna. When in the Mahabharata, when he went fed away, he was followed by a demon, a brother demon, and then he was killed in the cave by someone else.
Yes, Kalyavana.
And I never understood why Krishna let this happen?
I'm not sure. I don't know why Krishna didn't kill him personally, but he was killed by his great devotee, Muchukunda. And so there are many sinful souls who are destroyed by the arrows of Arjuna, for example. And that's also a very good destination for these, Krishna or his devotee, either way is good. But other examples of, yes? Dhruva Maharaj, very nice. His intention is he's very, very ambitious, right? Dhruva Maharaj is, when he's insulted by his father, he wants a kingdom. His father rejects him as his son. Remember, he pushes him off his lap. But that rejection is not merely about the affection between father and son, which in itself would be a big deal. But it's also his father seated on the throne. So that rejection is also disinheriting his son. It's also a statement telling him that you are not going to inherit the throne. So he's being divested both of the love of his father and of his inheritance as the eldest son. This is too much for him to handle, for anyone, but especially for him, because he's a kshatriya. He's a warrior by nature. He's too angry. So he decides that he wants a kingdom that is greater than the kingdom of his grandfather or great-grandfather? Great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. His great-grandfather is the creator of this whole universe, Brahma. Everything that we can know in this universe. He wants a kingdom greater than him. Talk about ambition. Right? All of our ambitions look very small. When we come in front of Krishna, we say, Krishna, please get me a better job. Krishna's like, it's okay, At least it's not like Dhruva Maharaj's demand. He wanted a kingdom bigger than Lord Brahma's kingdom. And he comes to Krishna with that intention. And Krishna says, it's okay. It doesn't matter. You've been serving me so sincerely for 6 months. You've done so much austerity. You've chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let me give you my personal darshan. Let me show myself to you. And he accepts that and rejects the intention, the very materialistic intention that was behind it, and purifies it. Any other examples?
I heard Indra that when he was throwing the rings and Govardhan, Krishna actually liked that he washed them.
Yes. Yes. So we will come to Indra's example in just a minute as an example of actually a different category. Very much so. So please hold on to that thought. But let me just conclude this by going back to the example that you gave, which was of Putana. This example is extra special when Vidura in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam comes to Uddhava to hear about Krishna. He wants to hear Krishna Katha. And Uddhava is, he asks him, tell me about Krishna. Uddhava is Krishna's childhood friend. He's been thinking of Krishna since he was a little toddler. They've been inseparable. And he says, so tell me a little bit about Krishna, because Krishna has just left this world. And Uddhava, as soon as he hears the question, he becomes lost in thought of Krishna, becomes ecstatic with emotional, devotional sentiments, and becomes so overcome with feelings of separation that he's not able to speak. And Bhagavatam says that as Vidura looks at him, he sees Uddhava sinking deeper and deeper into this separation. And he feels that it is going to be impossible for him to emerge from it. But he does come out long enough to recite a series of very beautiful verses in which Uddhava highlights the most joyous and therefore painful memories that he has of Krishna. Because that which gave him the greatest joy now is also giving him the greatest pain, now that Krishna has left. And so it's this emotional situation upon leaving someone who's very dear, where it's too much for him to handle, but also so sweet, thinking of Krishna's, all his activities and his pastimes. And then at one point, as he describes his different pastimes, he becomes especially full of emotion. And he recites this very beautiful verse, which I want to read for you, and the short purport that Prabhupada has, which I think is really, really wonderful. This is Canto 3, Chapter 2, text number 23. It's possible to remember this verse number because it's 3223. And he says this. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jighangsayapaya yadapya sadvi lebhe gatim dhatruchitam tatonyam kamva dayalum sharanam vrajema. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So she comes to Krishna. Her intent is terrible, is to kill the child when Krishna is a baby. But her action is quite sweet. She's doing this by offering her breast milk. And she's, of course, covered her breast with poison. And so Krishna, in this most radical example of his forgiveness, of his mercy, ignores the intention, accepts the action, and says, oh, you want to feed me milk as a mother, and gives her the position of his nurse in the spiritual world. What an intimate role for someone to play, and that being given to someone who wanted to kill him. Prabhupada says in the purport, here is an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord. The extreme mercy, even to his enemy. It is said that a nobleman accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. In his babyhood, he was administered deadly poison by Putana, a she-demon who tried to kill the wonderful baby. And because she was a demon, it was impossible for her to know that the Supreme Lord, even though playing the part of a baby, was no one less than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. His value as the Supreme Lord did not diminish upon his becoming a baby to please his devotee Yashoda. The Lord may assume the form of a baby or a shape other than that of a human being, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. He is always the same Supreme. Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. I'll read that sentence again. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Prabhupada is really a poet, one of his qualities. He's a real poet, Kavi. It's one of the 26 qualities of a devotee. And sentences like this are like, they're powerful, right? They're powerful. This is the standard of his character. And he ends by asking, therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? He's asking, this is the question that Uddhava is asking. How could I take shelter of anyone else? When this is the standard of the Lord's character. That even to someone who is the ultimate deceiver, right? Someone who chooses to take the most trustworthy position that exists in this world. Right? When people commit murders, they get heavy sentences. But there's very few circumstances when judges are as ruthless in their sentencing when the murderer is the mother. Such instances are very rare, but they do happen. And in those situations, almost invariably, the judge will say something along the lines of, you have taken that position, which is the place of ultimate trust in this world, the one place that no one ever questions, and you have used it to deceive and to harm. That's what she did. And yet, Krishna was willing to forgo, to ignore, to forgive that terrible intention and say, at least she approached me as a mother. Let me give her her reward, which is the position of mother in the spiritual world. That is the standard of his character. So when the intention is good and the action is terrible, Krishna ignores the action, takes the intention. And when the intention is terrible and the action is good, Krishna ignores the intention and takes the action. What's the only other possibility? What if both the intention and the action are terrible? Then what does Krishna do? And here we come to your example. That's the situation with Indra. Indra's intention was to kill the Vrajavasis. His action was pretty much to do almost that, right? Had Krishna not intervened, he would have succeeded. Both intention and action were terrible, bringing down a hurricane upon Vrindavan, destroying. I mean, Krishna protected the Vrajavasis, but he did destroy their whole village, right? It was crumbled to the ground. They had to rebuild after the waters calmed down. He did a lot of damage, and his intention was to destroy them entirely. These are Krishna's dearest devotees. Even when the intention is bad and the action is bad, Krishna is ready to forgive when the devotee asks for forgiveness. And when Indra comes to the Lord after the whole thing is over, right? 7 days, 7 nights, the rain comes down. And finally, he recognizes that something is not right. Krishna is not ordinary. And he comes crawling. He's so scared because he's just seen what Krishna is capable of. He can lift mountains. He knows Krishna can destroy him. He also knows that he deserves to be destroyed because what he's done is unforgivable. And so he comes crawling behind Surabhi, the cow, the heavenly cow. He brings her down with him from Indraloka, from his world, with the thought that Krishna loves cows and never can be angry at them. So maybe he'll forgive me. Right? Whatever fire is there in his eyes, those eyes will first see Surabhi and he will calm down. So he comes crawling, holding Surabhi's tail behind her. And Krishna, far from killing him or thrashing him, he chooses to forgive. He says, Indra, I have nothing against you. I had no intention to take your position in heaven. You're the boss. You should stay the boss. That's your job. You do it well. Just don't forget who you are. Don't forget who I am. And go back. And that's it. That's it. That's the only consequence he suffers from that whole episode. In fact, Bhagavatam says that Krishna meets Indra in a secluded place. You know why he meets him in a lonely place?
To not embarrass him.
To not embarrass him. How merciful is he? At the very least, okay, he wasn't going to kill him or destroy him. At the very least, he could have given the villagers the pleasure of, saying some choice words to Indra, right? He deserved at least that much. Some humiliation in the village square. Some public thrashing, verbally at least. But no, even to respect his dignity, he met with him in a secluded place, in a quiet place, so that Indra could leave with his dignity intact. He was, of course, a big person. He was ruler of heaven, and Krishna wanted to protect him, even from that distress. As it says here, this is the standard of his character. Same thing with Lord Brahma, right? When Brahma steals the cows and calves. Intention not good, action not good. He asks for forgiveness, Krishna forgives. Action is good, intention is bad. Krishna pays attention to the intention and ignores the action. The intention is bad, but the action is good. Krishna pays attention to the action, ignores the intention. Both the intention and the action are bad. Krishna says, if you ask for forgiveness, I will give it. Even though I couldn't find anything good in what you did or in your intention, I will still forgive. There's only one circumstance in which Krishna is not able to forgive. And that is when there is an offense to his devotee. And the reason for that is actually very simple. Well, first of all, it should be said that the devotees are more dear to Krishna than his own life. And so emotionally he struggles to forgive. Because it's like someone harming a child, right? Parents have trouble forgiving that situation. But there's also just a very simple, practical reason, which we'll talk about more later. We cannot forgive an offense done to someone else. If someone, one person comes and harms this person over here, then I, as a third person, cannot come and say, it's okay, I forgive you for what you did to them. No, that doesn't work, right? This person made the mistake, this person was harmed. They have to forgive. I cannot forgive on their behalf. I cannot say, no, it's okay, don't worry, you're forgiven. Krishna says, no, you harmed my devotee, I can't forgive. Even in those situations, Krishna does not want to destroy the person who has made the offense to the devotee. In order to protect them, although he cannot forgive them because the offense is not to him, in order to still try to protect that person, what does he do? He sends them to the devotee. He advises them and says, look, for your best interest, I would encourage you to go to that person and ask forgiveness. And knowing the character of my devotees, there are good chances of success here. And the most famous example of this, Maharaj Ambarish and Durvasa Muni. The Lord is not able to forgive because the offense is not to him, it is to Ambarish Maharaj, his devotee, but he does go to him. He does tell Durvasa what he needs to do in that situation. He doesn't leave him to scramble, to suffer. He says, I advise you, go back to Durvasa Muni, to Maharaj Ambarish. And all the way from, he's there in Vaikuntha. He's so powerful as a sage that he can do what the four Kumaras did not manage. He can enter Vaikuntha and show up in front of the Lord. And all the way from there, he comes all the way back down to this lowly planet and falls back at the feet of Maharaj Ambarish and says, please, I'm sorry. And that's when the Lord's Sudarshan Chakra gives him relief. In every situation, no matter what our condition, intention, action, both intention and action, or even in those terrible circumstances where we commit offense to another, Krishna still attempts to protect his devotees, to protect anyone for that matter. And that is the standard of his character. The reason we are compelled to forgive and to seek forgiveness is because this is the Lord we worship. This is the Lord we have chosen to worship. We do not worship a vengeful God. We don't worship a God who demands tit for tat, who says, I am going to get even with the world. No, that's not who we worship. Because we worship Krishna, and because this is the standard of his character, this is what he wants the standard of his devotees' character to be as well. And he recognizes that we're not perfect, and he recognizes that we will not always succeed in it, but he still wants us to try. And because each one of us seek that forgiveness from the Lord, frankly, this is why we are here, because Krishna forgives. Just think about it. Life after life. Talk about repeated mistakes. Life after life after life. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur says so beautifully, Bhaji boliya aise samsara bhitare. In the womb I said, Bhajibo, my dear Lord, I will worship you. In the womb, we told Krishna this. Bhajibo, I will worship you. How many times have we told him this? In how many wombs? I will worship. And what happens? Bhuliya rohile tumi avidyara bhare. But we forget. We come out, we forget, we become distracted, and we forget. Sometimes we even reject. And life after life, as we go from one planet to another, one species to another, one form to another, Krishna refuses to abandon us. From the very form of Indra in heaven to a cockroach, Krishna's there by our side, ready to hold us dear, to forgive us, to forget, waiting for us to turn to him. I mean, think about how demeaning, indignified that is for God to enter the form of a cockroach and be with us in that form. It'd be like Bill Gates living in a derelict house for drug addicts, right? Like, why would he do such a thing? Krishna has every opulence in this world, and yet he chooses to be next to us life after life, no matter what type of compromised situation we choose to be in, how unwholesome our condition might be. And ready to forgive. In a moment, we come before the Lord, we pray to him, and we expect forgiveness. We ask for forgiveness for all of that, for lifetime after lifetime. We expect it, and Krishna gives it to us. That is the standard of his character. And therefore, it behooves us to say, okay, how can I too find a way to live up to that standard of character of my Lord? Even if I will fail, even if I'm not perfect, how can I try to be like that, to be like my Lord? Because honestly, if I think about myself and I think about my own history and my own character and all of that, and fall downs and weaknesses, I am only here because of the Lord's forgiveness. I am only here because of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his endless mercy upon anyone who comes before him. So that's the motivation. That's the motivation for tomorrow and the day after. Thank you all so much. It's 9 o'clock. Our time is up. Thank you for your attention. For anyone who would like to leave or needs to leave the class at this point, please feel free because, actually we are 5 minutes past time and I apologize for that. I know breakfast is there and so many other things. If anyone has a couple of burning questions, I'm happy to stay on. But again, please don't hesitate to leave at this point if you need to. Yes, Prabhu here.
You brought a few examples of Krishna's forgiveness from Bhagavatam, and all those semi-good situations were resolved by him giving them a very elevated position. But none of these positions are the sadhya or goal for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So even position in Vaikuntha as the mother for Putana is really not work in that case? Because those ones are kind of like you're getting a lesser deal and it's okay. But in this case, you get the full deal, but without qualification. Whether these examples are to, well, the two questions. Whether this example is to follow as an example or is it an exception to the rule?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Forgiveness is only necessary when a person has committed a mistake. And therefore, clearly, to be in a situation that requires forgiveness is not ideal. We don't want to be like Indra and harm the Brajavasis. We don't want to be like Durvasa and commit offense to the Vaishnavas. So the point here is that Krishna is very forgiving. Now, one cannot blame him for not immediately giving prema bhakti in Vrindavan for someone who is committing significant offense. But nevertheless, what he is giving to these people is nothing to sneer at, or it is nothing to laugh at. He's giving significant rewards to people who are making significant mistakes. And I think that is what is worth focusing on. Now, of course, if we want the ultimate sadhya of Krishna prema and the highest goal of love for Krishna and Vrindavan, then we have to be a little bit better, right? We can't continue making offenses that require forgiveness over and over again. Then we have to actually come to the platform of pure prema bhakti. Even bhava bhakti, as we see in the case of Bharat Maharaj, can be risky, can be insufficient, right? So yes, we have to do more, we have to get better. But at the same time, it is not, it's not anything to dismiss. Krishna's gift to Putana, or Krishna's gift to Indra, Krishna's gift to all these people who have committed offenses. This is quite significant gifts that are important stepping stones on the path back to Vrindavan. Yes.
I was wondering with regards to the story of King Ambarish at the end. In principle, Ambarish had already forgiven Durvasa Muni even before Durvasa Muni came and asked for forgiveness. Now I was wondering with like a spiritual master who is the representative of the Lord, if a spiritual master in all his compassion forgives his disciple, even though the disciple does not ask for forgiveness, how would that work? Because I've seen this happen, so I just wondered.
Yes, it is the nature of the Lord's devotees that they do not hold on to any offense, that they let go of it, at least in due course, right? And we will speak about that the day after tomorrow, why it is in our best interest, even when we are not asked to forgive for our own benefit. And it is just the nature of the Lord's pure devotees that in due course of time they let go of that. They do not focus on a person's negative qualities. At the same time, the reason that Krishna is insistent that Durvasa Muni go seek that forgiveness from Maharaj Ambarish is because the process of seeking forgiveness will do him good. It will do good for Durvasa Muni, even though Maharaj Ambarish has long forgiven him. And in fact, because of Maharaj Ambarish's extraordinary character, he did not hold a grudge at all against him. Right? It says he's actually quite embarrassed when Durvasa Muni comes to seek forgiveness. He's like, this is not necessary. You're my senior, you're a sage, and I'm just a householder, I'm a king, I'm in worldly affairs. This is not appropriate, please don't do this. And he means it genuinely. He's not waiting for it. He's not getting some satisfaction from Durvasa Muni humbling himself. So he's long given up any anger or feeling he might have had. But for Durvasa Muni, that process is crucial. And for Krishna to let go of his anger for the offense towards his devotees, that process is necessary. Durvasa Muni needs to seek forgiveness because Krishna finds it otherwise very difficult to let go of the offenses to his devotees. We see this in the instance of Jagai and Madhai as well, right? That even though Nityananda Prabhu is so merciful, Mahaprabhu insisted in that particular Leela. Mahaprabhu was acting as the Supreme Lord rather than as the devotee of the Lord. Nityananda Prabhu was acting in the form of the devotee. And Mahaprabhu insisted that Jagai and Madhai seek forgiveness from Nityananda Prabhu. And that is what allowed the Lord to give up his anger and his Sudarshan Chakra in relation to Jagai and Madhai. So that is why the process of seeking forgiveness is important. It's important for the consciousness of the person who has done the offense, and it is important for the Lord to see that, even if the person who has been offended has already given it up or never even taken offense. Right? Sometimes that can happen, where the person may not take offense at all. They may not have even noticed that we acted in an offensive way. Genuinely, someone could do something or say something, we didn't hear it. But still, in that person who said it, the offense continues to fester, and it continues to be like poison within the heart. And therefore, for that person, it's important to seek forgiveness, even if the person never noticed it at all. Right? It's for our own benefit. So these are all things we'll elaborate in the coming days. Any other questions, comments?
It appears to me that forgiveness will lead to the 10 offenses. How do you involve the 10 offenses in the forgiveness?
Elaborate on that. How do you mean it leads to the 10 offenses?
Of course, because if we are allowed to avoid the 10 offenses, Krishna will forgive or not. It's difficult to...
You are saying if we avoid the 10 offenses, then...
If we try to avoid,
yes.
But we unfortunately didn't avoid them.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. 10 offenses include many of the offenses. They include a lot, actually, right there. Thank you. Nice point. I think there was one here.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to ask, so the most important thing is, of course, to ask for forgiveness, and I also heard to try to serve this person, devotee, and but if we do not get this forgiveness, and if we do not get the opportunity even to serve this person, is it still about the surrender to the holy name, or?
Yes. So, very nice question, and if I can please ask you to ask that question again tomorrow. Tomorrow we will talk about how we seek forgiveness, what are the steps for doing that, and what happens if that forgiveness is not forthcoming, and what do we do in those situations. So,
thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I had a question. I'm trying to relate do you create bad karma if you do a bad act that is forgiven?
Yes, good question. Definitely. Bad karma is there when we commit any bad activity. But in situations like this, when we're, especially when we're dealing with devotees, bad karma is kind of the least of our worries. Because Krishna is directly involved when it comes to relationships amongst devotees particularly. And so bad karma is there. Now when that forgiveness takes place, then we are relieved of that karma as well. This is what forgiveness means, right? But it means so much more than just that. Again, the accrual of bad karma definitely happens when we commit offense, and relief from bad karma happens when we are forgiven. But in both situations, the karma is the least of our worries. Accruing bad karma is not the biggest worry. It is actually damage to our Krishna consciousness, which is much a greater risk. And being freed of the bad karma is not the greatest benefit we get when we are forgiven. Rather, it is the ability to be again in a wholesome situation. wholesome in our own practice of Krishna consciousness, and wholesome also in our relationship with the devotees. That relationship is now made whole again. And that relationship with devotees is something far more valuable than merely relief from karma, which can happen in many ways, not only through the process of seeking forgiveness, but also through doing pious activities, doing penances of various kinds, bathing in a sacred river. All of these things can help us, relieve us of bad karma. But it cannot relieve us of the intention to commit bad karma. It cannot relieve us of the damage that is made to relationships between us and devotees or between us and Krishna. And recovery from that, as Prabhupada says in that purport, being made wholesome again, that is the greatest benefit of forgiveness. So, yes to your answer, but it's a small part of the whole picture of forgiving and forgiveness.
So, I want just an approval or chastisement for, as I said, the nature of Krishna. Something we don't think about so much and talk about. So this is the standard of the character of God. So one meditation I've taken and I've used from this, now is this correct or not, that Krishna never pushes. We push him. Is that correct or not?
What do you mean by push? In what regard pushing?
Well, there's in every religion of God's, there's orders and instructions, and especially as devotees, that there's so many rules where he's pushing, and devotees push each other. But Krishna's not, he doesn't really push. He's actually, even though he's the supreme powerful, supreme source, he's Krishna, he's God, but he never pushes. It's always completely on our side, the first act, or the ball is in our court, is the expression. Krishna puts the ball always in our court, and he waits for us how to kick the ball to him and how he responds kicking the ball back to us. So is that too one-sided? That of course he does push and he does have control, but in his devotees, he gives complete control over his devotees. He never pushes them, and if we push him, he goes, okay. Is that correct?
In theory, yes. So the theory Krishna gives in Bhagavad-gita, ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham. As someone comes to me, so I respond accordingly, right? To the degree they push me, I push back. Or to the degree they ask from me, I give. To the degree that they come to me, I come to them. So in theory, yes, Krishna is never pushing, the ball is in our court. In practice, Krishna is often a little too eager when it comes to his devotees to see them become purified quickly and to advance in Krishna consciousness, because he can see our desire, our intention, sometimes better than we can. He knows what we want before we know we want it. And so he often, in the case of devotees, Krishna will play less of a hands-off role, and he'll do a little bit of pushing himself. He'll put devotees in circumstances where surrender to him is the only choice they have, because Krishna gives otherwise a lot of other bad choices. And for example, Srila Prabhupada speaks of this in regard to his taking of sannyas. Of course, we understand Prabhupada's a pure devotee and so on, and therefore everything is all Krishna's desire. But at the same time, he shows us by his example the mood of the devotee in practice. And one of the things that we see, and particularly in the time that Prabhupada is getting ready to take sannyas, is that Krishna, essentially, the way Prabhupada describes it himself, is that Krishna essentially gave me no choice, right? He gave me a lot of bad choices. My business failed, my family life failed, like all these options, the doors just slammed shut. And then he said, I started having these dreams of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur coming, taking me by the hand and saying, come with me, take sannyas. And he says, I was horrified. These are the words Prabhupada used. I was horrified by the idea, right? So this is, Krishna is like, okay, I think you're ready. This is what you really want. And you may not think this is what you want. After all, he's horrified by the idea, but I'm going to push, right? I'm going to push. So I guess it's yes and no, the answer to your question. In theory, no, Krishna doesn't. He says, I'm hands off, right? ball is in your court, you come to me, I respond accordingly. I'm a fair God, and everything is properly balanced. In practice, Krishna breaks his rules every once in a while.
Does he do it personally or to the guru?
Does he do it personally or to the guru?
Both. Krishna will do both. He'll act externally, internally. Mahendrapu and then Mangaranjali.
Just a short thing on the previous, maybe you can elaborate the next days, but in a famous verse in 4 cantos, it says, devotees are so magnanimous they forgive, but the dust of their feet does not forgive. So there is some consequence, even if that's not considered karma, but I think you can explain more later.
Yes. The consequence is there, and we'll speak about this actually. There's a very nice example of this with the story of Parashuram, and Prabhupada says exactly the same thing in the purport, where he says that even though in that case he acted actually perfectly, still there was. Well, anyway, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it more tomorrow.
And there's one more thing I thought, because you explained about Indra, the example, and then just after that, Durvasa, who basically attempted to kill devotees. And why that different treatment? Krishna didn't ask Indra to beg for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I thought, what could be the difference? And maybe because Indra is actually a great devotee, is very dear to Krishna, and Durvasa is not famous for being devotee.
Yeah.
That could be something to elaborate also.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. I was thinking of that question as I was speaking. I was thinking, why is it that Indra was not asked to go to the Brajabasis and seek forgiveness from them, and how that, and I think your suggestion is very nice, that Indra is in a different category as Durvasa Muni is. Durvasa Muni, of course, is a sage, very pure, very stalwart, extremely austere, but at least before this incident takes place, he's not a Vaishnava, whereas Indra is very much a Vaishnava. He may be Sakama, he may be with material desires, a Sakama Bhakta, but nevertheless, he is a Bhakta, he is a devotee. And so this becomes a very a different situation that Krishna is navigating between devotees. Also, I think Krishna was personally there to protect the Brajabasis and give them his solace and his comfort and his protection in a way that he was not there personally for Maharaj Ambarish. So I think there's one difference there as well, whereas the Brajabasis were really in ecstasy as they were under the mountain, whereas Maharaj Ambarish was really in a dangerous situation all alone. So, thank you for that, bring that up. Okay, maybe one final question?
Thank you so much for bringing up this point that Prabhupada makes, that forgiveness allows us to come into wholesomeness of, ourselves, devotional service, and also in relationship with others. And there's a saying that goes like, you may forgive but not forget. And perhaps this not forgetting, of course, it's to protect ourselves, but at the same time it does bring some disruption still in the relationship, so that it cannot become wholesome. So I was wondering, what is Krishna's example in this act of forgiving and forgetting? Because we are like his children, so maybe there is something we can actually follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So tomorrow, when we speak about the different steps of how we seek forgiveness, actually no, this is the day after tomorrow, when we talk about how to forgive, then I think it's step number 3 or something like that. Anyway, we'll speak specifically about this point and examples from Bhagavatam of how forgiving is just the first step. Then the second step, which you have called nicely forgetting, or we might say is making the relationship wholesome again, is the next step after that. And the two things are not the same, because we can forgive, and yet, like you said, there can still be a break in the relationship that needs to be then made whole again, that needs to be mended, even after forgiveness has taken place. Perhaps it's because of awkwardness, perhaps it's because of some memory of pain, perhaps it's because of embarrassment. Many reasons can be there, right, on either side that will prevent it from becoming wholesome again. So we'll speak about that particular scenario day after tomorrow. But let me just say that the example from Shastra that comes to mind right away from Krishna's perspective, since you asked about that, is in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, when Arjuna sees Krishna's universal form, and Krishna scares him in a very intense way. And Arjuna's relationship with Krishna is fractured in some way. It's broken, right? He's saying, Krishna, I spent all this time laughing with you and joking with you and sitting on the same bed, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that, I guess. And so please forgive me and tell me who you are. And Krishna, like, he intensifies it when Arjuna says he's scared, clearly. And he says, Krishna, tell me who you are and what is your purpose. And instead of relieving his fear, Krishna says, Kalosmi sarvakshayakrit praviddo. Time I am the great destroyer of these worlds. And I've come to destroy all of you. Right? And by this point, Arjuna is he's like, the whole thing, the relationship is on the rocks. You know, it's kind of like if you have had a relationship for a long time with someone, and then one fine day, you see something about them that you're like, whoa, where did that come from? I've known you for a long time. I didn't see that coming, right? And it can be very difficult in a relationship, maybe an unexpected display of anger or some sort of moral fall down or something that we totally did not expect. And so then Krishna, in chapter 11, he then helps Arjuna recover from that. When he says, let this form of mine be finished. And he reminds him that all that love that you showed me, it is only through that bhakti that you can know me as I actually am. So I'm sorry for all this, but that's not the relationship I want with you anymore. It's not that what you were asking sorry for, the joking and laughing and sitting on the same bed, that's what I actually want from you. And it is only through that type of love that you can know me as I am. And he says that twice in the 11th chapter to recover. And then he follows it with a 12th chapter, which is also a recovery of that relationship. Krishna continues to say, my devotee is very dear to me. My devotee is very dear to me. My devotee is special and better than the impersonal form, better than this, better than that is my devotee. Right? He's trying to, from a relational perspective, he's trying to recover from the damage that the 11th chapter has caused. Okay, I think we're 9:30, and if I don't stop, then I will miss out on breakfast. So thank you very much for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Not our breakfast.
You are